Welcome to this series looking at how to answer the AQA GCSE history questions for Paper 1 Understanding the Modern World. In this video we're going to be concentrating on the source questions and we're going to be looking at America 1920 to 1973. The first thing that you'll see when you open your paper are two interpretations that look a little bit like this. So these two interpretations both talk about President Roosevelt. But the interpretations in your exam this summer could talk about any aspect of the American 1920 to 1973 course. Based on those interpretations, you'll be asked three questions. Now the three questions will always have the same format. How do they differ for 4 marks? Why might they differ for 4 marks again? And which do you find more convincing for 8 marks? And for this video we're going to concentrate on the first question. How does interpretation B differ from interpretation A, which is a 4-mark question? So, because it's a 4-mark question, you should know that you need to spend no more than 5 minutes answering the question, and you only need to write 1 paragraph in order to achieve all 4 marks. And to get those 4 marks, this is what the mark scheme says you need to do. The first thing is that you only need to talk about the content of the source. That's what the source tells you about President Roosevelt. Then you need to explain what they mean, and then you need to show that they're different by comparing them. So let's go back to interpretation A. For this question, how are they different, you only need to use the part of the source that's in the box. That means that you can completely ignore this bit that's written above it. So now you've started reading the interpretation, you need to decide 2 key things. The first thing is whether the interpretation is positive or negative. Then the second step is to explain what it means. So interpretation A is clearly negative about President Roosevelt. That's because he says he has no confidence in him and that his ideas sounded to him like a possible dictatorship. And once you've done that, you're ready to move on to interpretation B. Again, you're only going to use the information that's written inside the box, and you're going to ignore the information that's written above it. And we're going to follow the same steps. First, we're going to decide whether it's positive or negative, and then we're going to explain how we know. So interpretation B is clearly positive about President Roosevelt because he says that after FDR, America was in a much better place, and that without him, there might have been a dictatorship. And now you're ready to write it. So to write it, you need to follow the 4 following steps. Firstly, step 1, say whether interpretation A is positive or negative. Then you need to explain why in your own words. Then you need to make a direct comparison to interpretation B by saying something like in comparison or alternatively. And then repeat steps 1 and 2 for interpretation B. So what could an answer look like? So this answer has made a clear judgment about whether interpretation A is positive or negative about President Roosevelt. Then they've explained why by using the interpretation in their own words. They then made a direct comparison to interpretation B, and again explained why in their own words. As a result, this answer would get 4 marks. To recap, firstly, only use the content of the interpretations to answer this question. Then, step 2, decide whether interpretation A is positive or negative. Step 3, explain why in your own words. Step 4, make a direct comparison to interpretation B. And then finally, repeat step 2 and step 3 for interpretation B in order to get your 4 marks. I hope you found this video useful. Please check out my other videos to help you with the other exam questions for AQA GCSE history.